We have so much more left to talk about. Put on your thinking hats, ladies and gentlemen. This one's even more boring than the last one. Section 4, Article 1. States get to decide when, where, and how their senators and representatives get elected. So they have to set some rules. When, where, how. Now, a lot of that's sort of just been set in stone. We don't have to think about that all too much. Now, if you're wondering, in 2020, there's election stuff. There's plenty of things happening. That's true. But those don't relate to senators and representatives. So none of that would even apply to the modern problem happening right now. So don't sweat it. Section 5. Oh, also, Congress has to meet once a year. Super important. They can't just be like, no, we're not going to meet. It's like, no. At the very least, you're going to meet one time. Section 5. The Senate and the House of Reps both get to judge the elections, returns, and qualifications of their members. So basically, they can sort of set the parameters for themselves about who they want and who they don't want in terms of like quality of person or, anything. Or if they're like, no, we think that was suspect, then they have to deal with that themselves. Because remember, back in this particular version of it, they kind of get to pick, they have a little bit more say, especially over those senators. So, they get to pick. And you need a majority of people to be there to do it. You can't just be like, well, there's 75 senators and only 15 of us are here and we're going to set all the rules. No. You need a majority of senators to show up and be there and do their job. And if they aren't, they can just make them show up. They can demand that everyone else has to be there, and they can go forth and be required by law, because it's in the Constitution, or in the real thing anyway, that they have to go. And if they don't, well, let's not think about that too hard, shall we? Alright, they get to define how the meetings are going to go, sequence, order of operations, all that jazz, and if people are getting rowdy, they can remove them. And they get to determine what rowdy kind of constitutes as. Also, if they don't like each other and they want to get rid of each other and overrule the will of the people or the will of the House Representatives, as it was initially, they have to vote. And they have to have a 2/3 majority to kick anybody out. So it's actually kind of hard, because you have to get 66% of those people to agree that that guy sucks. And they might not. Section 6. This one gets kind of weird, but basically all you need to know is that people get paid. The government pays them to be there, because if they're going to be, working for the government for 2 years or 6 years or for 4 years, they're going to need a little bit of cash. And so they get paid, and how much they get paid can change. They can pass a law that says it's, $1,000 a year, or they can pass a law that says it's $100,000 a year, and then they can pass another one later that said it was $1 million a year if they really wanted to. They don't have clear salaries determined in the Constitution. Also, they can't get arrested while they're hanging out in there. They've got to, unless there's proof of treason, felony, or they breach the peace, which means like if they start a fist fight in the Senate floor, they can get dragged out and arrested for that. But otherwise, they're pretty safe while they're in there, as long as they're in session. After that, though, all bets are off. Also, they can't serve in any other government office if they're already serving Congress, and especially not like one's been invented. So if they become a congressman or senator, and then they invent a whole new job, they can't get hired for that job. That's a no-go. Only one at a time. Section 7. We're cruising today. We're going to get through Article 1, I promise. The House has to start up any law regarding raising money for the government, but the Senate always has to concur. So even if the House of Representatives comes up with a bill and says, okay, here's what the taxes are going to be, here's where all this stuff is going to be, this is how we're going to tax, who we're going to tax, how much we're going to tax, if the Senate doesn't give it its stamp of approval, it doesn't go anywhere. And that's true of just about every bill that goes through the Congress, which is the word for like both houses combined. Right? If the Senate initiates something and the House doesn't agree, dead in the water. Vice versa. Right? And the Senate, though, can propose amendments to the Constitution if they want to. The President gets their veto power in Section 7. Basically, the President can say, don't want it, don't like it, hate it, get rid of it. And he says, no, big old stamp. Vetoed. Denied. But if the Congress still wants to pass it, they can say, hey, 2/3 of us think that this is a really good idea, so forget the President, we're going to do it anyway, and then they vote, and the President just gets to say, no, don't do that, and it doesn't mean anything. So there's some back and forth there. So the president can't just veto everything. They can overrule a veto. Checks and balances, federalism, it's everywhere. If they do that, though, they can't be anonymous. So they can't just be like, no, I reject you, president, and not put their name on it. If they're going to reject the president's veto, they got to sign their name into that particular area. Also, lastly, if for some reason the president just waits, and he's like, I don't want to sign it, but I know they're going to overrule my veto, so if I veto it, I'm just going to look bad. So I'm just going to not do anything. He gets 10 days of not doing anything, and the bill becomes law, regardless of his signature. So that's important, I guess. Oh, my brain. Alright, we got to talk about Congress, which is just, Senate and the House combined. Something fall on my head? They get to do, a lot of things. I'm not going to list them all. Look it up. I'm tired. I'll go sleep. But, some things to note. They get you borrow money, regulate transactions with other nations, Native Americans, and even other states. So, they just got their fingers in that pie of regulation, how we interact with other people groups. And then they also get to declare war, establish post office, roads, regulate the value of money, and to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution. Sometimes it's known as the necessary and proper clause, which causes kind of a lot of ruckus, because what's necessary and proper is open for interpretation, and nobody can agree what that means, even from the really beginning. We'll might take a look at that later on in other videos. 2 more to go. Section 9. It's another long list. So, basically, to make some highlights, the slave trade cannot be abolished until 1808. But they say at that point it can be abolished, and we will find that it in fact does get abolished in 1808. No nobility. The federal government can't institute nobility, and if you look in Section 10, also the states can't do that either. There's some stuff in there about bribes, ex post facto laws, meaning that if you commit an act that isn't a crime, and so they go, oop, we better make that a crime, and then they do, they can't come in and arrest you for it. They're like, it wasn't illegal when you did the thing, so they can't arrest you for it later. Now, if you do it after it becomes illegal, that's totally on you, bro. But before, free and clear. Section 10. States aren't supposed to get into any treaty, alliance, or confederation. That kind of sounds awkward. I'll let you figure out why. And, let's see. Also, there's something in here about tonnage, which just relates to ports. But states are also not supposed to engage in war, themselves, unless they're invaded. And they're not really supposed to have troops or wars, or warships of any kind. They gotta stay out of that business. War is for the federal government, not the states. And that is Section 1. 6 more to go.